He had been alone in his room, the small metal walls humming softly with the sound of the station's life systems. The outpost was quiet at this hour. Most soldiers were asleep or on rotation duty. The lights were dim, set to human night cycle, and the human engineer sat on the edge of his narrow bed, reviewing maintenance logs on a handheld screen. He did not hear the door open. The first sign something was wrong was the change in the air. The pressure shifted just a little, like the room had taken a breath. He looked up. She was standing there. She was tall, taller than most humans, with smooth, pale blue skin that reflected the low light. Her eyes were large and dark, shaped differently than a human's but focused clearly on him. She wore layered garments made of thin, glowing fabric, clearly not designed for human environments. They stared at each other. Before he could speak, before he could even stand, she calmly stepped further into the room. The door slid shut behind her with a soft mechanical sound. Then, without fear or hesitation, she reached up and removed the outer layer of her clothing. It fell gently to the floor. Then another layer, and another. He froze. His mind raced through emergency protocols, security rules, and 1,000 possible explanations, none of them making sense. He stood up slowly, raising one hand, not in threat but in confusion. "Stop," he said carefully. "You can't be in here." She did not stop. When the last layer came off, there was no shock, no scandal, no threat. Beneath the garments was a delicate framework of translucent biological membranes and faintly glowing patterns along her skin. Thin breathing filaments fluttered weakly at her sides. This was not exposure for intimacy. It was exposure for survival. She smiled. It was not a human smile. Her lips barely moved, but her eyes softened, and the faint glow along her skin brightened. To her, it was a sign of peace. To him, it was the most alarming thing he had seen since joining the Frontier program. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low but steady. "You're not safe like that." Her translator implant activated with a soft tone. "That is correct," she said calmly. "I am not safe." Alarms began to echo faintly down the corridor outside. Someone had noticed the unauthorized entry. He knew security would arrive within seconds. She took a step closer. "Please," she said, "do not summon them." "I didn't," he replied quickly, "but they're coming anyway." "That is acceptable," she answered. "My action has already fulfilled its purpose." He glanced at the door, then back at her fragile form. Her breathing filaments fluttered faster now. She was struggling to adapt to the room's atmosphere. "You're going to collapse," he said. "That is also acceptable," she replied. That made him angry. "No," he said firmly, "not in my room." He moved without thinking, grabbing a thermal blanket from the wall and wrapping it gently around her. She did not resist. In fact, her shoulders relaxed slightly as the fabric settled around her. Her glow dimmed, but her eyes stayed locked on his. Security burst in moments later, weapons raised but unsure. The sight in front of them made them hesitate. "She entered without clearance," the lead officer said sharply. "Step away from her." "She needs medical support," the engineer replied. "Now." "She violated." "She's dying," he interrupted, "or she will be if you keep yelling." The officer paused, then cursed under his breath. "Medical team now." As they escorted her out, she reached back and lightly touched his wrist. Her grip was weak but deliberate. "You accepted," she said softly. He frowned. "Accepted what?" "Responsibility." Then she was gone. Hours later, the station was buzzing. High-ranking officials arrived. Alien diplomats demanded explanations. Security logs were reviewed again and again. One fact stood out. She had bypassed every advanced security system on the station except one. She had walked straight through the human section, not because it was weak, because it was open. The engineer sat in a debriefing room, hands folded, eyes tired. "She requested you by name," the station commander said, "before she collapsed." "That's impossible," he replied. "I've never met her." "You've never met her," the commander agreed. "But she knows you." They played a recovered fragment from her implant memory. Images flickered across the screen. Human disaster zones, human rescue operations, humans fighting hopeless battles and refusing to retreat. Then his own face appeared, taken from a public record during a frontier repair mission where he had stayed behind to stabilize a failing reactor while others evacuated. "She studied humans," the commander said quietly, "and she chose you." "Why?" he asked. "Because her species is running out of time," another voice said from the shadows. An alien council representative stepped forward, tall and imposing, with hardened features shaped by centuries of politics. "She removed her protective layers in your presence because, in her culture, that means absolute trust," the representative said. "It means surrendering survival to another." The engineer leaned back slowly. "She walked into my room because," the representative continued, "your species is known for one thing above all others." "And what's that?" he asked. The alien met his eyes. "You protect what is not yours to protect." Silence filled the room. "She believes," the representative went on, "that if humanity refuses to help her people, then the galaxy is already lost." The engineer closed his eyes for a moment. Somewhere in the medical wing, the alien woman lay unconscious, her breathing shallow but stable. And without realizing it, one human had already stepped into something far larger than himself. Something that had been waiting for humanity to say yes. When the engineer left the debriefing room, the station felt different. The halls were louder, filled with whispers and hurried footsteps. News had spread fast. An alien dignitary had entered a human's private quarters. Protocols had failed. Trust had been placed where no one expected it. He walked toward the medical wing, his thoughts heavy. He had not asked for this. He had only acted the way he always did, protect first, ask questions later. Now that habit had placed the weight of an entire species on his shoulders. Outside the medical room, two armed guards stood at attention. They straightened when they saw him. "She's stable," one of them said. "Barely." "Can I see her?" he asked. They hesitated, then received a silent confirmation through their comms. The door slid open. Inside, the room glowed softly with alien medical equipment brought in from an embassy ship docked nearby. Machines hummed in strange rhythms. In the center lay the alien woman, her body wrapped carefully in adaptive fabric. The glowing patterns along her skin were faint now, like dying stars. He stepped closer. She looked smaller like this, fragile. Nothing like the calm figure who had walked into his room without fear. A human doctor stood nearby, studying a display. "Her biology is complex," the doctor said quietly. "She's not meant to survive long outside her home environment. Every hour here hurts her." "Then why come at all?" the engineer asked. The doctor shook his head. "Because staying was worse." He pulled a chair close and sat down. He didn't know why he stayed. Maybe because leaving felt wrong. Hours passed. When her eyes finally opened, the glow along her skin flickered weakly. She turned her head slowly and saw him. "You remained," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone had to," he replied. Her lips curved in that soft, alien smile again. "You continue to confirm the data," he frowned. "I'm not data," she studied him carefully. "That is precisely why you were chosen." Over the next days, she spoke when she had strength, always calmly, always honestly. Her name, when translated, carried a meaning close to bearer of last light. She was not royalty, not a warrior. She was a witness, the final representative of a civilization already falling apart. Her people had faced the enemy before. Not once but many times across centuries. Each time they grew more advanced, more logical, more efficient. Each time they still lost. "They learn patterns," she explained one day, her voice stronger now. "They predict strategies. They remove hope first. Civilizations that rely on perfection collapse when perfection fails." "And humans?" he asked. She turned her eyes toward him. "Humans fight even when broken." That was why she had come. Her species had searched the galaxy for someone who could act without certainty. Someone who could choose compassion over calculation. someone willing to stand between danger and the weak, even when it made no sense. They had found that trait strongest in humans, but the galaxy did not agree. Political pressure grew quickly. Alien leaders accused her of manipulation. Human officials argued among themselves. Some feared war. Others feared becoming targets. The engineer was summoned again, this time to a council chamber filled with beings from a dozen worlds. "She endangered herself and your station," one alien delegate said sharply. "This was reckless." "She made a cultural appeal," a human diplomat replied. "One we didn't understand." "She exploited human emotion," another voice added. The engineer stood silently until they noticed him. "You," the delegate said, "did you know the consequences of accepting her gesture?" "No," he answered truthfully. "I just knew she needed help." Murmurs filled the chamber. "That is the problem," the delegate snapped. "You act without seeing the full picture." He looked around the room, at the powerful beings, the advanced technology, the endless calculations. "Maybe that's why she didn't come to you," he said quietly. Silence fell. The alien woman was brought in days later, supported by adaptive equipment. She stood before the council, weak but steady. "I did not come to command," she said. "I came to ask." Her eyes moved to the engineer. "My people are nearly gone," she continued. "We have hidden, negotiated, surrendered knowledge, and still the enemy advances. We cannot win alone. We do not ask you to fight for us. We ask you to fight with us." "And what do humans gain?" a council member demanded. She did not hesitate. "The chance to be who you already are." That answer did not satisfy everyone. Threat reports soon followed. Distant colonies vanished. Signals went dark. The enemy was no longer a story from alien history. It was coming. Human fleets were not the largest, not the most advanced. But they were flexible, adaptable, messy in ways no algorithm could predict. The engineer was assigned to a joint task force, not because of rank, but because she trusted him, because she had placed her life in his hands first. As ships prepared, she stood beside him in the hangar, watching human crews move with controlled chaos. "They are afraid," she said softly. "So are we," he replied. "Yet they move forward," he nodded. "Fear doesn't stop us, it just reminds us what matters." When the first engagement came, it was brutal. Alien fleets collapsed under precise, overwhelming force. Human ships took damage, lost systems, broke formation, and kept fighting. The enemy adapted quickly. Humans adapted faster. Improvised tactics, sacrificial maneuvers. Rescue missions launched in the middle of battle. Things no logical system would allow. The engineer watched from command as human pilots disobeyed orders to save alien crews, as mechanics patched ships with scrap, as medics treated anyone they could reach, regardless of species. The alien woman watched too, tears forming along her glowing eyes. "This is why," she whispered. "The cost was high, too high, losses mounted. Even human resilience had limits. Then the enemy changed strategy. Instead of attacking fleets, they targeted hope, communication relays, civilian centers, places meant to break spirits. The engineer realized the truth too late. "They're trying to make us give up," he said. The alien woman closed her eyes. "That is how they win." Human leadership gathered for a final decision. Retreat. Consolidate. Protect Earth and a few core allies. Abandon the rest. The engineer stood again. "If we retreat now," he said, "we survive today and die tomorrow, alone." "And if we stay?" a general asked. "We bleed," he answered, "but we show them something they've never beaten." "What's that?" "Each other." The vote was close. Humanity stayed. As ships launched for a final stand, the alien woman approached him one last time before the battle. "My body will not survive much longer," she said calmly, "but my purpose has." He wanted to argue, to promise safety. But he knew better now. "You trusted us," he said. She smiled. "And you proved worthy of that trust." As the fleet jumped into the unknown, one truth spread through every channel, every species, every frightened heart. Humanity had chosen to stand. Not because victory was certain, but because someone had walked into a human room, placed her life in human hands, and believed. And humans do not abandon those who believe in them. The final battle did not begin with explosions. It began with silence. The human fleet emerged from jump space into a region once filled with life. Now it was empty. Broken stations drifted like bones. Dark clouds of debris marked where cities had once existed. Even the stars seemed dimmer here, as if afraid to shine. The enemy waited. They did not look like ships in the way humans understood. They were massive, shifting structures of dark metal and energy, constantly changing shape. Sensors struggled to lock onto them. Every scan returned different results. The alien woman stood beside the engineer in the command center of the lead human carrier. She was weaker now. Adaptive supports surrounded her, feeding her atmosphere and energy. Her glow was faint but steady. "They are confident," she said quietly. "They should be," the engineer replied. "They've beaten everyone else." "Yes," she agreed, "but never like this." The enemy moved first. A wave of energy surged forward, precise and devastating. Allied fleets formed tight defensive patterns just as they always had. And just as always, those patterns failed. Ships vanished in flashes of light. Shields collapsed. Perfect formations shattered. Human ships broke formation immediately. Some commanders would have called it chaos. To humans, it was instinct. Small craft darted forward, drawing fire. Larger ships turned sideways to shield damaged allies. Rescue vessels launched even as weapons fire tore through space. The enemy hesitated. They adjusted their targeting, recalculated priorities, shifted strategies. Humans changed again. They overloaded engines to ram enemy structures. They vented entire compartments to save reactors. They used debris as cover. They did things that made no sense to a mind that expected self-preservation above all else. "Enemy response time is increasing," a human analyst reported. "They're confused." The engineer leaned forward. "Keep pushing." Losses were heavy. Names filled casualty lists faster than they could be read. Every human ship carried scars within minutes. But the fleet did not break. The alien woman watched the battle unfold, her eyes wide. "They are not trying to win," she said softly. "No," the engineer replied. "We're trying to hold. Hold long enough for something new." Deep within enemy territory, a small group of human ships slipped past the main engagement. Old freighters, retrofitted miners, ships no advanced fleet would bother tracking. They carried refugees, scientists, engineers, and one desperate plan. The enemy realized the threat too late. A massive structure turned, unfolding like a living thing, and fired a concentrated beam toward the escaping group. The lead human ship took the hit. It did not explode. Instead, it burned. Systems failed one by one. Hull plates peeled away, but the ship stayed in place, drifting directly into the path of the beam, blocking it with its own body. "Why is it not retreating?" the alien woman whispered. "Because there are people behind it," the engineer said. The ship finally broke apart, but the beam lost coherence. The smaller ships escaped. The enemy adapted again. They stopped focusing on human ships. They targeted the alien woman. A focus strike tore through the carrier's shields, punching deep into its structure. Alarms screamed. The command center shook violently. "She's the symbol," the engineer realized. "They think if they remove her, we'll lose hope." Medical teams rushed to stabilize her as systems failed around them. Her breathing filaments fluttered weakly. Her glow dimmed. She looked at him, calm even now. "This was always the outcome," she said gently. "My people did not expect survival, we expected meaning." "No," he said firmly, "we're not done yet." He opened a channel to all human ships. "They think hope lives in one person," he said. "Show them how wrong they are." Human response was immediate. Every damaged ship that could still move turned toward the carrier. Pilots pushed failing engines beyond safety limits. Crews rerouted power from life support to shields. Alien allies saw it and followed. For the first time in its existence, the enemy faced something it could not calculate, a wall of defiance. The combined fleets surged forward not to attack but to protect. The enemy fired everything it had. Ships fell. Lives were lost, but the carrier stood. Inside, the alien woman's eyes filled with tears, glowing softly as they drifted away in the artificial gravity. "This is impossible," she whispered. "No species would do this." The engineer knelt beside her. "We do." As the battle raged, the small human task force reached its destination, the heart of the enemy's network, a structure older than recorded history, pulsing with energy stolen from countless civilizations. Human scientists worked fast. There was no time for perfection. "Will it work?" one asked. "It doesn't have to," another replied. "It just has to hurt." They overloaded the structure's energy flow, forcing it to process contradictory commands. Chaos flooded the enemy network. For the first time, the enemy hesitated everywhere at once. Across the battlefield, enemy structures slowed. Their movements became uneven. Their coordination faltered. Human fleets pressed harder. The engineer felt the shift before he saw it. "They're breaking," someone shouted. The enemy attempted to retreat, but the network collapse made it impossible. They turned inward, trying to preserve themselves. Humans did not let them. The final strike was not a superweapon. It was hundreds of small acts, boarding actions, sabotage, sacrifices. People doing impossible things because someone needed them to. When the last enemy structure fell silent, space was quiet again. The cost was terrible, but the galaxy still lived. Days later, the alien woman lay in a quiet recovery chamber. Her body was failing. Nothing could stop it now, but her eyes were clear, peaceful. The engineer sat beside her, exhausted beyond words. "You changed everything," he told her. "No," she replied softly. "You revealed what was already there." News spread quickly. Across worlds once divided by fear and politics, one truth echoed. Humanity had not saved the galaxy because it was the strongest. It saved the galaxy because it refused to abandon it. Representatives from countless species gathered to honor the fallen. They spoke of courage, sacrifice, and unity. But when they asked the alien woman what she wished to be remembered for, she smiled gently. "I wish to be remembered as the one who trusted humans first." Her glow faded slowly, like a sunset. She passed peacefully, surrounded by those she had saved. In the years that followed, the galaxy rebuilt. New alliances formed, not based on power but on shared responsibility. Humans were no longer seen as reckless or primitive. They were seen as guardians. In human academies, the story was told simply. A woman walked into a room. She placed her life in human hands, and humanity answered, not because it was easy, not because it was safe, but because that is who humans are.